I grew up in a regular middle-class neighborhood. The houses were close enough that you could hear your neighbor's lawnmower on Saturday mornings, but not so close that anyone felt like they were on top of each other. Families had been there for years. Some had watched each other's kids grow up. It wasn't a gated community, but it had gates, low metal ones at the front of each driveway, mostly decorative, mostly left open. My parents moved us there when I was about 11. I'm the oldest of three. My younger brother and sister were still in elementary school at the time, and my parents wanted somewhere stable, close to their work, with schools they trusted. The house was 2 stories, light-colored walls, tiled roof, a narrow front porch that faced the street. From the outside, it looked exactly like what it was, a family home. By the time I was in my early 20s, I was still living there. That wasn't unusual where I grew up. I worked during the day, helped out at home, saved money. My parents were practical people, not overly strict, not careless either. The house had rules: doors locked at night, lights off by a certain hour, shoes lined up near the door. Most evenings, my mom watched TV in the living room. My dad read or fell asleep early. My siblings stayed in their rooms. I usually went to bed late, scrolling on my phone, listening to music. My bedroom was upstairs. From my bed, I could see the door clearly. That mattered later, though I didn't think about it at the time. One morning, my mom mentioned that the front gate was open when she woke up. She said it casually, like she was just thinking out loud. Someone must have forgotten to close it the night before. No one really questioned it. A couple days later, it happened again. This time my dad noticed. He was the last one to come home the night before, and he was sure he had closed it. He double-checked the latch, even said something about it being stiff. In the morning, it was open again. That still didn't feel alarming. Annoying, slightly confusing, but nothing that made anyone think of danger. Gates get left open. People misremember things. That's how it was explained. Then small things started stacking up. A side door that we rarely used was unlocked one afternoon. My brother swore he hadn't touched it. My mom said she hadn't been near it. My dad checked the lock and didn't find anything broken, just unlocked. Another time, the lights in the hallway were on when no one remembered turning them on. My sister thought maybe I had done it. I thought maybe she had. It turned into one of those small family arguments that ends with everyone shrugging and moving on. At that point, the word stalker hadn't come up. It still felt like coincidence, human error, the kind of stuff people don't want to dwell on because dwelling makes it feel bigger than it probably is. It was my mom who started feeling uneasy first. She was home more than the rest of us. She noticed patterns. She noticed that things felt slightly off even when nothing specific was wrong. She started locking the doors earlier in the evening. She asked my dad to check the windows before bed. She didn't say why at first. She just did it. One afternoon, she found muddy footprints near the back of the house, outside, near the wall, close to a window. We had had rain the night before, so again, it could have been anything, but that was the first time she said it out loud. "I think someone's been around the house." She said it quietly, like she was trying not to scare herself by saying it too confidently. My dad brushed it off at first. He said the neighborhood was safe. He'd lived there long enough to know most of the people nearby. There hadn't been any break-ins reported. No one had posted anything alarming in the neighborhood groups. But he started checking things more carefully. A few nights later, the gate was open again. This time, everyone noticed. It was early morning, just after sunrise. My dad was leaving for work. He came back inside and asked loudly who had gone out early. No one had. My mom was still in her pajamas. My siblings were getting ready for school. I hadn't even left my room yet. The latch was loose. That was when my parents decided to call the police. 2 officers came by later that day. They were professional but calm in a way that made it clear they weren't seeing anything urgent. No forced entry, no damage, no witnesses. It's strange how calling the police can do that. It's supposed to make things feel safer, but sometimes it does the opposite. It turns vague unease into something real enough to be acknowledged, but not real enough to be solved. For a few days after that, everyone relaxed a little. My mom still checked locks more than before, but the tension eased. We went back to our routines. If anything, we felt embarrassed for overreacting. Then the first letter showed up. It was on the front porch when I got home from work, sitting there, centered neatly near the door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper. I noticed it before anyone else did. I thought it was junk mail or a flyer, but when I picked it up, I knew it wasn't that. The paper was thicker, clean, deliberate. Inside was a drawing of a heart. It was drawn carefully, dark lines filled in, and inside the heart was my name, Anna, my full name, written clearly. I stood there long enough that my mom noticed me through the window and opened the door to ask what I was doing. I didn't answer right away. I just handed her the paper. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at it. Then she called my dad's name. That was the moment everything changed. There was no rational explanation for that letter, not one that made sense. No neighbor would do that. No delivery mistake, no misunderstanding. It wasn't addressed, but it was meant for me. There was no question about that. My parents called the police again. They asked who I knew, whether I had a boyfriend, an ex, someone from work, anyone who might be obsessed or upset with me. I answered honestly. There wasn't anyone like that. I wasn't dating anyone. I didn't have conflicts. I was quiet. They checked around the house again. Same result as before. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, no signs of forced entry. They suggested it might be someone trying to scare us. Before leaving, they advised us not to engage, not to leave notes or messages in response, to stay alert, to call again if anything else happened. That night, no one slept well. My mom insisted I lock my bedroom door, which I had never done before. My dad checked the house twice before going to bed. I lay awake. Nothing happened that night, or the next. For a few days, things were quiet again. Then the second letter came. It arrived in the afternoon like the first one. No envelope, no writing on the outside, just a folded piece of paper left on the porch. This time, there was no drawing. There was a photograph. It took a moment for my brain to understand what I was looking at. It was my bedroom. Not a stock image, not something pulled from social media. It was my actual room. My bed, my blanket, the small table next to it. The angle was wrong for it to have been taken from the doorway. It was taken from inside the room. On the bed was a man. He was sitting on it, facing the camera. His face was covered, either by his hands or a piece of cloth. It was hard to tell. He was close enough to the lens that the background blurred slightly, but there was no doubt it was my bed. I felt cold all at once, like something inside me had shut down. My mom took it from my hands and started shaking. My dad called the police immediately. They came quickly this time, faster than before. They treated the house like a crime scene. They asked when we'd last been home, who had keys, whether anything was missing. Nothing was missing. No drawers disturbed, no signs of a struggle, no broken locks. That was the worst part. The photo meant someone had been inside our house, in my room, on my bed, and they had done it quietly enough that no one noticed. My parents had a long conversation behind closed doors. I didn't feel safe upstairs anymore. The idea of that man sitting on my bed wouldn't leave my head. A few months later, I took a job in another city. It was something I had been considering anyway. Better opportunities, a chance to be independent. My parents didn't argue this time. They helped me pack. When I moved out, the letters stopped. No more incidents, no more signs of someone watching the house. My parents stayed there for years after that. Nothing like it ever happened again. I've gone back to visit since then. I can walk into the house, I can sit in the living room, I can even go upstairs during the day. I don't know who took those photos. I don't know if the person ever truly left or if they just lost access. There was a period of time when someone knew our house better than we did, and we never saw them. I was 24 when all of this happened. I was living with my parents and my younger sister in a house they'd bought a few years earlier, after we moved out of an apartment. It wasn't meant to be a long-term place. The plan was always to stay there for a while, save up, and then move somewhere newer once things lined up better financially. I was working part-time and helping around the house, and my sister was still in school. Nothing about our lives felt unstable or unusual. It was just one of those in-between periods where everyone is busy and tired, but things are generally fine. The house wasn't falling apart or anything like that. It was a single-story place, good neighborhood, the kind where most people keep to themselves and you don't see much activity unless someone's mowing their lawn. The previous owners had done some renovations, and a few rooms had clearly been repurposed over time. One of those rooms was what we called the storage room. According to the paperwork, it used to be a bedroom at some point, but by the time we moved in, it had no closet and no proper ventilation, so it ended up being a place where boxes and unused things were kept. From the first day we moved in, that room smelled strange. I don't know how else to put it. It wasn't a normal musty smell like old cardboard or dust. It was sharper than that, and it didn't fade after cleaning. My mom scrubbed it multiple times. We tried airing it out. We used different cleaning products. The smell always came back. It was strongest near the door and along the wall closest to the hallway. Eventually, everyone just accepted it as one of those things you don't fully fix in a house that isn't forever. Months later, there were a few vandalism issues in the neighborhood, annoying enough that people started talking about it. Someone was breaking small things, knocking over trash cans, leaving marks on fences. A couple of neighbors had items taken from their yards. It wasn't constant, but it happened often enough that people were uneasy. My dad decided to install security cameras, just a basic setup that covered the front yard, the back, and a few interior areas near entry points. One of the interior cameras ended up pointing down the hallway, with part of the storage room door visible at the edge of the frame. That wasn't intentional. It was just the angle that made sense at the time. Another camera covered the opposite side of the hallway, closer to the living room. Together, they should have shown anything moving through that space. For a while, the cameras didn't catch anything interesting. We checked them occasionally, mostly out of habit. Then one evening, my dad called us into the living room and asked us to look at something. He didn't sound alarmed. If anything, he sounded confused. On the screen was a still frame from the hallway camera. Near the storage room, there was a dark shape. It was upright and roughly human-sized, but it didn't look like a person standing normally. The shape was uneven, and the outline didn't make much sense. The top of it came up higher than a person's head should have, but not in a way that looked like a hat or anything recognizable. The arms, if that's what they were, seemed too long, hanging lower than they should. The image quality wasn't great. It was grainy, especially in low light. At first glance, it could have been a shadow or a glitch, but the shape had weight to it. It blocked part of the light from the hallway, and you could see where it interrupted the background. My dad pulled up the footage from the other hallway camera, the one that should have shown the same area from a different angle. That screen showed nothing. The hallway was empty. We went back and forth between the two feeds several times. The timestamp matched. The angles overlapped enough that whatever appeared on one should have shown up on the other. It didn't. No one jumped to conclusions. My mom said it was probably a camera issue. My dad agreed, though he replayed the clip more than once. My sister didn't say much. I was thinking that the shape looked wrong, but I didn't have a better explanation, so I didn't push it. After that, we stopped checking the cameras as often. The vandalism slowed down, and life went back to normal. The storage room still smelled the same. No one wanted to spend time in there unless they had to. A few months later, my sister screamed in the middle of the night. It wasn't the kind of scream you hear when someone has a bad dream. It was loud and sharp and cut off suddenly. Everyone woke up and ran toward the hallway. She was standing near the storage room door, shaking and crying, saying she'd seen something on the floor near the door frame. She kept saying it was low to the ground and moving, and that it went back toward the room. We turned on all the lights. My dad checked the room. There was nothing there, no animal, no sign that anything had moved through. The door was closed, like it always was, but it wasn't locked. The camera footage didn't show anything unusual. The hallway looked exactly the same as it always did. My sister slept in my parents' room for a few nights after that. No one said much about it during the day. It was treated like a scare, nothing more. She didn't bring it up again on her own. Not long after that, I went into the storage room to get something out. We had one of those inflatable pool animals in there, the kind shaped like a cartoon creature, and a family friend's kid had been asking for it. We didn't have a pool anymore, so I figured I'd give it away. I remember opening the door and dealing with the smell, the same way I always did, and stepping inside to pull the box out from the corner. The room was dim, even with the light on, because it only had one small fixture and no window. I was bent over, tugging at the box, when I heard the door move behind me. I thought someone was closing it to keep it from swinging. Then the latch clicked. I called out, assuming someone was messing with me. No one answered. I raised my voice and tried again. Still nothing. I walked to the door and tried the handle. It didn't open. The door didn't budge. The house wasn't big. People were in the front, talking. Someone should have heard me. I turned back toward the room, partly to look for my phone, which I'd left on one of the shelves, and partly because the space behind me felt occupied in a way I couldn't place. Near the far corner, where we stacked old boxes and broken furniture, there was a figure. It looked like a woman, but not clearly. The shape was there, solid enough that it separated itself from the clutter around it. The hair was long and dark, hanging forward, obscuring most of the face. The posture was wrong. The arms didn't rest naturally, and the way it stood made the room feel smaller. I didn't hear it move. It didn't step forward. It just stayed there, facing me. I started yelling. I remember the sound of my own voice and how loud it was in that small space. The door opened suddenly, and my dad pulled me out into the hallway. My legs didn't cooperate very well, and I had to sit down. After that, things blurred together. I know I started feeling sick not long after. I developed a fever and chills, and my body ached in a way that didn't feel like a normal flu. I ended up in the hospital because the fever wouldn't come down, and they kept me there for observation. No one could point to a clear cause. I stayed sick for almost 2 weeks. While I was recovering, my parents talked about the house more seriously than they ever had before. They just agreed that it wasn't worth staying. Once I was well enough, they started the process of selling it and looking for something else. We moved out. There isn't a neat explanation for any of it, and I'm not interested in trying to force one. I only know what I saw, what the cameras showed, and how the place felt over time. Whatever was going on there didn't need our attention to exist, and leaving was the only part of it that made sense. I was raised on the same property my parents are still living on. It's rural. There were neighbors, just spaced far enough apart that you didn't see them unless you were looking for them. Long driveways. Fences that existed more as suggestions than boundaries. Woods that belonged to someone, even if you couldn't always tell who. My dad bought the land before I was born. He worked most of his life and did most of the work on the house himself. Room by room, year by year. When I was little, parts of the house always felt temporary. Half-finished projects, tools left out, stacks of lumber under tarps. By the time I was in my 20s, it was solid and settled, but my dad never stopped treating the land like something he needed to manage and protect. He walked it almost every day, checking fences, clearing fallen branches, making sure nobody had dumped anything back there. People underestimate how often strangers wander onto private property in rural areas. Hunters following trails that don't belong to them. Kids looking for places to drink. People who just assume no one will notice. I was living at home at the time this happened. I was in my 20s, working and saving money. I had my bedroom on the backside of the house facing the yard and the tree line beyond it. I liked that room. At night, the only light back there came from the moon or the occasional car far off on the road. One afternoon, my dad came inside quieter than usual. He didn't say much at dinner. Afterward, he asked me if I'd been walking around the back of the property at night. I said no, I hadn't. I didn't really have a reason to. He nodded and didn't push it. The next day, I heard him on the phone in the garage, speaking in that low, controlled voice he used when he didn't want anyone to overhear. When I asked my mom later what was going on, she said he'd found something odd on the property and was probably overthinking it. It wasn't until a few days later that he told me what it actually was. He'd been walking one of the deeper paths near the edge of our land when he noticed something tied to a tree. He thought it was trash, one of those cheap solar garden lights people sometimes toss when they break. But it was a trail camera. It wasn't pointed at the woods. It was pointed toward the house, not directly at a door or a window, but angled in a way that made my dad uncomfortable. It had a clear view of the backyard, the back of the house, and most noticeably, my bedroom window. My dad took the camera down immediately. He didn't smash it or leave it there as bait. He brought it inside and took the storage card out. The footage went back several nights. It wasn't constant motion-triggered chaos like you'd expect from animals. Whoever said it knew how to place it. It only activated when something crossed the backyard, and on multiple nights, something did. A man. He would come into frame from the left side of the yard, walk slowly toward the back of the house, disappear out of view, then reappear a while later, and walk back the same way he came. He never looked at the camera. Not once. The timestamps showed that someone had been checking the camera too. The battery never died. The angle never shifted. Someone was maintaining it. My dad didn't tell me all of this at once. He showed me one clip, then shut the laptop and said he was calling the police. The police came out, looked at the footage. They didn't find footprints. The ground was hard, dry. They asked about neighbors, hunters, anyone we'd had issues with before. We didn't have answers. A little while after that, things felt tense but quiet. My dad installed motion lights along the back of the house. He started locking things he'd never bothered locking before. I noticed him checking the yard more often, especially at night. I tried not to let it get to me. The footage was unsettling, but it wasn't violent. No threats, no messages, just a man walking where he didn't belong. I told myself it was someone casing the place for theft, and realized we weren't easy targets. One night I was in my room, sitting on my bed, scrolling on my phone with the overhead light off. Outside, the yard was dark. Then suddenly it wasn't. A narrow beam of light swept across the grass, slow, not the motion lights. A flashlight. I froze for a moment, watching it move closer to the house. My heart was pounding, but my first instinct was still to explain it away. Maybe my dad was checking something. I went to my parents' room and told my dad what I'd seen. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed a flashlight of his own and told my mom to stay inside. I stood at the back window and watched him step into the yard. The light was gone by then. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. Then my dad shouting. Someone ran. I didn't see them clearly, just a shape moving fast toward the trees. The police came again. They searched. They found nothing. The officers were more serious. They asked if I felt safe. And that's that. The night I'll never forget. I was asleep when it started. A sound woke me. At first I couldn't place it. My room was dark. My brain was still slow with sleep. Something was hitting the window. Hitting. I sat up just as it happened again. I saw him. A face pressed against the glass. He was bald. His head looked almost too round, like it didn't belong there. His eyes were open wide, and his mouth was slack. He started banging his head against the window, repeatedly, firmly, over and over. The glass rattled. I screamed. My parents were up instantly. I heard my dad running down the hall. The man's head hit the glass again, and then something changed. Maybe he lost his footing. Maybe he startled himself. He fell backward. I heard a thud outside, then scrambling. By the time my dad reached my room and turned on the light, the window was empty. The police came for the third time. This time they found someone, a man who lived nearby, bald, thin, quiet. He matched my description closely enough that they brought him in. But there was a problem. He had no injuries, no bruises, no cuts, no swelling. Nothing to suggest he'd just been repeatedly striking his head against glass or fallen from a window. He also had an alibi. Someone else said he'd been with them that night. The police didn't have enough to hold him. They let him go. The camera footage never turned up anything new. No usable trail. My parents sold part of the land a few years later. Whoever was watching us was never identified and never found.